Greetings. Hi. This is a summary of our last class meeting before the beginning of spring break. This class occurred on Wednesday, March the 13th. We began on the 13th a consideration of Palestinian literature, specifically Palestinian short stories. Both on the 11th, on Monday the 11th, which I did not post a video summary of, and I'm sorry for that. And on the 13th, we looked at an introduction to Palestinian literature. The generations of Palestinian writers beginning in the 1920s, 1930s, were Palestinian writing in a still embryonic stage. In other words, it was still in the process of maturing. It was after 1948, the establishment of the State of Israel, that the Palestinian literature came more into its own. It is intriguing how trauma is often an important spur to artistic creativity. There are many theories about why this is, but one of the most intriguing possibilities to me is that dislocation, trauma, sends especially sensitive individuals in search of not necessarily answers, but in search of a way to explore what has happened, to explore the questions raised by the implications of whatever trauma a people or even an individual has experienced. And that certainly was the case with Palestinian writers. It was the generation of writers whose work began to appear in the 1960s, who we are, for the most part, except for, well, I was going to say Yizhar, but Yizhar is an Israeli writer. But the Palestinian writers we're going to look at are all writers who their work appeared either in the 50s or much more so in the 60s. We talked about the concept of the diaspora, Diaspora. The diaspora, any diaspora, is a scattering of people from their homeland. So if we speak of the Palestinian diaspora, it is the scattering, the move of Palestinians from their homeland, the land they considered theirs, Palestine, previously the British Mandate. After the creation of Israel, not all Palestinians went into refugee camps. Many Palestinians who could left entirely and have since located all over the world. That global spread of a people from its home location or locations is known as a diaspora. There are many diasporas. So there is the Puerto Rican diaspora. There is the Jewish, perhaps best known, the Jewish diaspora. There is the We might even, some might even speak of the French diaspora, people who are French who have relocated. Home is France, but they have relocated and engaged in their uh, work or whatever has caused them to relocate at places throughout the world. Now, with the advent of the State of Israel in 1948, the Jews gained, of course, a homeland. For the Jews, the State of Israel was the recovery of land promised them thousands of years before by God. For Palestinians, the dream became no longer for the dream for Jewish for the Jewish community, global community became a Zionist dream for a homeland once again in the Middle East, in ancient Palestine. But after 1948, the Palestinian obsession became with the recovery of what was their home, their land, in the Palestinian perspective. So it's interesting that after the 1948, the trope of the wandering Palestinian who is living uh, outside of his or her homeland, became common in Palestinian literature. This trope of the wandering Palestinian replaced the trope of the wandering Jew, which um, had been a trope of Hebrew literature by Jewish writers. But after the State of Israel was formed, um, there was a homeland. The Jew no longer had to wander because there was no homeland. The Jew who continued to wander did so voluntarily. Um, so we have uh, a a tension here between the de facto ending of the Jewish diaspora with the State of Israel's creation, but the beginning of the Palestinian diaspora, also with the State of Israel's creation, which resulted in the Nakba. Um, we began to discuss the Emile Habibi short story called At Last the Almond Blossoms. This is a story that deals with memory and land and the tight relationship between memory, land, and identity. I wrote on the board, and I asked students to please copy this short text down in their notes because it captures the subject matter of the Habibi story. And that text is this. I will read it slowly so that you can write it. You can replace this video if you need to go back and to pick up some of this if you don't get it all the first time. The quote is this: "No group identity exists without memory as its core meaning. The sense of continuity over time and space is sustained by remembering. And what is remembered is defined by the assumed identity." No group identity exists without memory as its core meaning. The sense of continuity over space and time is sustained by remembering, and what is remembered is defined by the assumed identity. Now, I hope that you have read the Habibi short story. I'm not going to reprise the short story here, but if you have read the story carefully, you know that there are two primary characters in the story, Mr. M and the narrator. The devices that Habibi uses to construct this story, for the most part, is the reconstruction of the a dialogue that takes place between the narrator and Mr. M. It's very important to bear in mind that both Mr. M and the narrator here are Arab Israelis. They are both Arab Israelis. And they both are located in Haifa, which is a city in northern Israel on the Mediterranean. Habibi was born in Haifa in 1922 and remained in Haifa, an Arab Israeli, through the Nakba and on through the rest of his life. Now, the story is about the loss of identity by Mr. M as a result of forgetting. And that forgetting is intimately connected, centrally, critically connected to his repression of his Arab identity. After college in Jerusalem, he goes back to Haifa. He takes a job as a secondary school teacher in an Israeli school. In order to keep that job in this Israeli school, he must abandon his connections to most of his Arab friends. He must abandon connections with his previous Arab relations, or as the way Habibi phrases it in the story, he had to cut connections with the narrator because the narrator was an agitator against the state. So one of the central dynamics in this story is that Mr. M, this Arab Israeli, represses, cuts himself off from his Arab identity and becomes thoroughly Israeli in his identity. Remember what we just said. What is remembered is defined by the assumed identity. And in this case, Mr. M assumed the identity of an Israeli, even though his roots, his ethnic heritage was Arabic, was Arab. So in this story, there is this tight connection between place, land, memory, and identity. I commend the close reading of this story to your most careful attention, as of course you will be writing about it, and most likely you will be writing about this story as it stands in relation to other Palestinian stories that we will read, primarily by the great Palestinian writer named Kanafani. That is all for now. I will thank you for your attention through this video. I hope this summary has provided some um, insight as to what we covered on Monday the 11th and Wednesday the 13th. For now, I'll say thank you and goodbye.